Well, welcome to Las Vegas. We're going to have a fun time in this small group experience. I'm going to hit it big down at the tables later. You might see Paris behind me, and Planet Hollywood, the Bellagio, is just right there. If you know Vegas very well, I'm on the balcony in the Cosmopolitan. We'll see what happens on the Hitting It Big thing. But really, we're here for this small group experience called The Gamble that goes along with the sermon series by the same name. And the whole point of this series and discussion is to help each other and look to God's wisdom to uncover some of the bad bets that we build our lives on. Things that, because we've grown up in our culture, they just seem so true. We take them for granted, just like breathing. We just think that's the way the world is, but it's actually not. And those things are actually working against us and against the way of life and the quality of life and the joy and meaning and purpose and significance that God wants for us. Just like Paul talked about in the book of Romans, he said we have to be intentional about that, not just to be conformed to the way our world thinks, but instead allow our minds to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And that's my prayer for this series, is that God will use the Bible, His Word, in our discussions to renew our minds and help us think differently. And so each week we'll be looking at a different bad bet. And for this first week, here's our bad bet. And that is that freedom comes from doing whatever you want to do in life, which certainly sounds very American, right? I can do whatever I want to do. Nobody can tell me what I want to do. It's like a non-church friend of mine, his motto in life is, I don't know what I want to do in life, but I do know that I want to do whatever I want to do. And that doesn't always work out so well. And that's really the point of this first bad bet. That you might think that freedom leads to, or that doing whatever you want leads to freedom in life, but often not. Often it just leads to regret and bondage. And there's a reason for that. And the Bible fills us in on this principle. It's the principle of the sower. And that is, yes, you can do whatever you want, but every decision is like planting a seed in the ground. It's going to come up. Everything that we do, good or bad, every decision we make, you can do it, but it's going to have consequences. Paul talks about that in the book of Galatians 6, 7 to 9. Don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always harvest what you plant. Those who live only to satisfy their own sinful nature will harvest decay and death from that sinful nature. But those who live to please the Spirit will harvest everlasting life from the Spirit. Even in a place like Vegas, right? People come out to do whatever they want. That's kind of the point of Las Vegas. It's the adult playground. It's what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's doing whatever you want to do with nobody to judge you. The motto of this hotel is just the right amount of wrong. And it feels fun and it feels great. But even just on a trip to Vegas, think how many lives are impacted negatively. And over time, think about the underbelly, right, of just all the consequences of bad decisions over time that felt right at the time and felt good at the time. But that's not true in Vegas. That's true wherever we find ourselves. And you and I can just kind of bump around trying to figure out life, trying to do whatever we want and see what works, see what doesn't. But that's really learning the hard way is not the way to go, especially because Jesus came here to reveal His better way, to kind of give us a map, to give us the GPS, to let us know wisdom and His better way and how life can work out so much better. Like one of the ways that He talked about that, or one of the times He talked about that, was a Sermon on the Mount, the longest sermon we have of His, where He talks about how He came to give us a happy life, the Greek word makarios, which means fulfilled and significant and joyful and happy. It's the way of life that we're created to live. And yeah, we can bump around and try to find that on our own and learn the hard way, what works and what doesn't, but He came to make it easy for us. And He came to reveal truth and make it possible for us to know Him so that He can begin to transform our thinking and change the way we look at our world. At the end of that sermon, He talked about what wise people do. And that's what I'm going to encourage us to do, is to be that kind of wise person, because He said wise people are those who hear His words, who hear His teaching, and put it into practice. And what that means is that rather than freedom coming from doing whatever we want, because that often just leads to regret and trouble, instead freedom comes from submitting to Jesus' better way, to what He taught, to to what he filled us in on, and choosing then to put that into practice. And so therefore, at the beginning of our series here, the beginning of this experience, the most important decision you and I can make is to follow Jesus, is to say, I'm going to submit to his better way, and to help each other do that. And so I want you to have a discussion right now of what does it mean to follow Jesus, and what does it mean to begin a relationship with Jesus. You might talk about how some of these principles we've already talked about have worked in your life, meaning learning the hard way, or the principle of the sower, and that, yeah, you can make decisions, but every decision has consequences. And then have a discussion as well just about how you as a group can help each other follow Jesus more closely, to put into practice what Jesus teaches rather than just doing what we want. Because I think on our own, I'm not sure we'll get that right. But as a group, we can really help each other to live the way Jesus wants us to live, and really the way we want to also. It's a really, really important discussion, because this is a really, really bad bet. And that is that freedom is found in doing whatever you want. Let's not let each other make that mistake.